All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. If I haven't met you, my name is Kelly Mand, and I am the program director with A Time to Heal. And joining us today, we have Dr. Tracy Bender. Dr. Tracy Bender is an occupational therapist and the rehab director at Cancer Partners of Nebraska. She received her doctorate in occupational therapy at Creighton University. She specializes in cancer rehab, lymphedema, women's health, and health coaching. We have a lot of interest and excitement, like I said, around today's topic, and we are very fortunate to have Tracy join us today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really excited to be with everybody this morning. I love talking about this topic, and I'll kind of tell you up front, I teach this in a really informal way. This isn't going to be like going to a formal meditation retreat because I think this is a topic that is really intimidating to people. And I want to kind of bring it into a more real world situation so that it's something that you're not scared to try and use. So, and I want to give a shout out to A Time to Heal because I just think this is such a cool organization. I look through, whenever I work with an organization or I promote an organization on my resilient survivorship, I really look into what is their mission. And we share a really similar mission, and that is there's not enough resources, there's not enough services available for what everyone deals with after a cancer diagnosis and treatment. So I just want to give some props to what you're doing and how cool this is that you're sharing all of these things with people. So thanks for joining me on Saturday morning, and we'll go ahead and kind of get started here. All right, so my first question here is why in the world would meditation and mindfulness be used or taught in therapy? And the very simple answer to that is that if you have a good therapist, your therapist should be treating you as a whole person, mind, body, and spirit. We'll go ahead and go to that next slide. So we'll talk about occurrences, and I'm sure everybody is quite aware of this, but more than 1 million people in the United States are diagnosed with cancer each year. 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will face a diagnosis in their lifetime. Nearly 15 million people in the US are currently living with a history of cancer. And of those diagnosed with cancer today, over 70%, and that number continues to grow, will survive beyond 5 years. So there's a lot of people dealing with this, and there's a lot of side effects and a lot of ways that this affects life. And so it's a really prevalent thing. Let's go to that next slide. So the emotional impact of a diagnosis is kind of what I want to focus on today. How is a diagnosis perceived? And how does a diagnosis continue to affect everyone involved? So we all have a different perception, right? So I've got this little collection of luggage sitting down here, and I want you to kind of envision that each one of those bags down there is maybe a different part of our life. It might be our previous medical history. It might be any of the experience we've previously had related to cancer. And I talk about this a lot in my treatment because I think anybody even 40 plus has a really different perception of cancer, the C word, the big bad wolf, than younger people, because things are changing. The way we treat this is changing. It used to be that, somebody got a cancer diagnosis, they were really sick, they were really isolated, maybe they were hospitalized. And now we see a lot of people working a full-time job as they go through all of their cancer treatment. And so our perception of this, the way we emotionally take this in when we get the news, is where I start when I work with patients. And so one of the first questions I ask when I'm working with somebody on a new evaluation day is, how are you doing with this? And I usually have a box of tissues sitting next to me when I ask that question, because sometimes I think it hits people like a train, and they really haven't just sat and thought about how they are dealing with it or taking it in. And then we all know that as we continue to go through this, whether we've achieved remission, we've achieved the cure, or we're dealing with ongoing diagnosis, this effect, this emotional effect, it doesn't go away per se. We'll go to that next slide. So if you're not familiar with oncology rehab, if you haven't had a therapist or you haven't been immersed in this culture yet, we'll just touch on that real quickly. So similar to stroke or orthopedic rehab, we utilize a multidisciplinary approach to assessment and treatment. Basically, we address the patient's disease-related and treatment-related impairments, but we definitely want to kind of start from the beginning and know what is that baseline of function, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. We want to decrease the number or the severity of patients' impairments throughout treatment. We want to work to decrease a survivor's disability and subsequent distress. And this includes prehab, rehab, maintenance, and follow-up care. We'll go to that next slide. So the purpose of prehab, and I like to get people right after they find out they have a diagnosis before they even initiate any treatment, whenever I can, because this allows me to really get to know the whole person before they're impacted by all that's to come. I don't always get everybody at that phase, but that's the most ideal phase. And we're really working hard to implement that in our community. I want to understand that individual's baseline of function. And I want to know what that looks like everywhere, not just physical function, but emotional function. Do you have any stress, anxiety, depression? Well, we all have stress, right? Or even mental health issues going into a diagnosis. What does the rest of your medical history look like? We want to help people adopt healthy habits. When you get a cancer diagnosis, there's so much thrown at you. And it's very overwhelming for people. And I like to give people a way to participate in their care. I'm going to give you information so that you can get to know your body. We're going to talk about perception. But we want you to be able to prevent things that could be coming down the pike. So we want you to understand how it all works and give yourself an opportunity to participate in your care and not just feel like it's all being thrown at you and you have to follow everything that's told to you. Interventions that encourage smoking cessation, weight control, stress reduction, physical activity. So I find of all the treatment areas that I have worked in as an occupational therapist, that patients dealing with a cancer diagnosis are the most motivated people for change, hands down. And that makes my job really enjoyable, actually, because my patients are really ready to take a look at their lives and make some changes that are necessary. I, of course, want to reduce pain and stress, any kind of physical impairments. We want to reduce the possibility of functional disability. That's not always possible, but if there is some functional disability, how can we adapt things in your life to make that as minimal as possible? Always trying to reduce emotional distress, and then reduce direct and indirect healthcare costs or life impact, and then improve mental and physical health related quality of life. And that also includes your team, your support system, whether that's the caregivers that live within the home or the people around you at work or in your community that are helping you. Go ahead and go to that next slide. This isn't a surprise to anybody, but now that we've been given this big diagnosis, the big C word, and we have all this stuff coming at us, these are some of the common types of treatment that people go through. And you can imagine that each one of these things comes with kind of this greater amount of, or this mountain of things with it. So just hearing the word chemotherapy is very emotional, intimidating, scary. That alone can cause people to have, a major breakthrough of anxiety or depression, fear. Each one of the things on this list can bring about a whole host of physical, emotional detriment. So we need to look at that and help prepare people for these things when we can. We'll go ahead and skip to that next slide. So I know the goal of A Time to Heal and a goal of mine is really to be looking at, we'll go to the survivorship slide. There you go. Survivorship as a whole. The emergence of survivorship as a distinct phase of cancer care, correlation with recognition of the health and quality of life concerns that can affect cancer survivors from their diagnosis onward. This is having to become a very relevant part of every cancer treatment program in the United States, but it's not fully regulated yet. So we're getting a variance of this all over the country. And I have gone all over the United States doing education on topics related to survivorship. And I just get such a mixed bag of what people have access to. And that drives me to come on here on a Saturday morning and take time away from my family and provide as much education as I can, because I think it's really important that if you don't have access to it, you can get on something like this webinar from Mississippi and get access to something that you don't have in your community. So all of you coming together as a community to learn and then taking that information and paying it forward is really important. So I always try to make all of my resources available, and if I can, at little to no cost, because I want you to keep spreading them so that people have good access. And if any of you have been familiar with me or worked with me in our clinic, we try to connect you to as many resources as possible. I will tell you more about resilient survivorship as we go on in this presentation, but I try to make resources available. I have a meditation guidance that's free on there. And so you guys are a part of survivorship too, because it can't always be the professionals because you don't always have access to them. So I'm going to teach you, and then I'm also going to task you with paying that forward to other people. A substantial number of cancer survivors will develop physical health problems and disability due to cancer and its treatment. And that also comes along with, of course, that emotional distress piece and psychosocial and emotional impairments. And let's be honest, we all have fears moving forward. Even those of us that don't have a cancer diagnosis have the fear of cancer, but it's especially real for anybody who's experienced this. And we have to help create a better understanding of what that looks like for the people around us who think, oh, you're fine. They got all the cancer. It's fine. Move forward with your life. Well, the fear is real, and we can figure out how to manage that fear. But we also need to help others understand it. Okay, we'll go to the psychosocial and emotional health slide there. Obviously, these are some of the bigger fears that I deal with in my everyday today. Depression and anxiety, and if we're being honest, all of us come with a little depression and anxiety before we even hear that C word. Mental health, whether we had a diagnosis before or we start to have changes with that due to treatment. Fear is just a huge one, and it sneaks up on us. A lot of times we don't even know it's there. It's kind of a subconscious thing, and then it will present itself all of a sudden in random situations. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And I don't know how much this is talked about with any of you, but post-traumatic stress disorder related to cancer is very real. It's obviously a little different than something a soldier would experience, but it tends to present itself as recurring fear-based or anxiety-based thoughts that start to sneak up on us and become more and more frequent. And I really try to address this a lot with my patients, because if you can recognize that it's becoming a problem in your life, it's a lot easier to deal with. Decreased coping skills, dealing with physical changes or chronic pain. Image recovery and intimacy and sexual recovery. Okay, so where do we start? I couldn't borrow this picture without getting the little gray image pop up, but I love this picture, and I wanted to share it because this is a really good depiction of where I'm at. I may get you at the starting line, I may get you right before the finish line, or I might get you anywhere in between as far as having somebody as a patient in therapy. But that also is true when I go out and do educational seminars, whether I'm talking to healthcare professionals or I'm talking to patients, caregivers, or loved ones. So it's important that I can adjust to where you are. And so I like to get to know as much as I can about who you were before, who you are now, and maybe what's coming down the pike for you, or even just what you're fearing coming down the pike. We'll go to that next slide. So let's talk about perspective. And I like to throw this question out there because I think that we don't think about it this way. But what is cancer? And if we're going to simplify cancer, cancer is simply a cell that grew out of control. It did the wrong thing. And I tell people all the time we have millions of cells in our body, but I actually took the time to look this up. And believe it or not, we actually have about 30 trillion cells in the human body. 30 trillion. I mean, we can't even imagine what trillion looks like if we were to see a trillion M&Ms. So I want to help try and shift the perspective that we have today and encourage you to start living for the 30 trillion cells that you have instead of the 1 or 2 or even 50 cells that are not cooperating with us right now. Okay, let's put cancer into perspective and let's not give it so much power in our whole being. So, with that being said, what can we do to have positive cellular repair in our body? What types of things do we do in our daily routine that actually help us keep those 30 trillion cells healthy? Because if I'm weighing the scales, I'm going to put my money on 30 trillion cells before I'm going to put it on 1 to 50 cells. Would you guys all agree with that? So, in your daily routine, diet is something that we can easily focus on. And if you look at diet, instead of looking at going on a diet, because who wants to be on a diet, blah, right? But if you look at everything you put into your mouth, instead of doing it out of habit or boredom or sadness or stress, everything that enters your mouth, you should make a decision. Is this disease causing or is this disease preventing? Okay. That's a really interesting way to look at food. And that will help you actually maybe start to research the food that you eat and make some decisions. Because at the grocery store, you go for spaghetti sauce and there's 60 different kinds of spaghetti sauce. So maybe you don't necessarily have to change that much what you're eating, but maybe you change some of the brands of what you're eating just to adjust and get some healthier versions. And that doesn't even really change your weekly schedule or what you do for your normal cooking habits, but maybe you're just able to adjust and make some of the things that you're putting into your body a little healthier versions of that. Exercise is something that we can all control. And I get a lot of pushback on exercise because if you're not an exerciser, it's a hard routine to start. But let's think about exercise as this big, broad scale, because there's a lot of ways we can exercise. Getting oxygen into our blood and getting our heart rate up can happen in many forms. So we could do that by gardening, doing yard work, cleaning in our house. We can go hiking or go for a walk. We can get into the pool with our kids or our grandkids, go to the lake. Hiking is good exercise, biking, taking the dog for a walk if you've got a dog. But one thing I think people forget about that may be a kind of a fun form of exercise is sex. Sex is actually a really good form of exercise. In fact, one of our best forms of exercise. Sleep is the next thing we're going to talk about. Sleep is something that most of my patients report is not going well. And it may be that anxiety is preventing us from falling asleep, or our bladder is preventing us from staying asleep. We don't always prioritize how many hours we're getting. And I have people tell me, I only need 3 or 4 hours of sleep and I'm good. But logistically, that's not actually true. Sleep is where we actually do our very best cellular repair. And so when we're asleep and we get into REM sleep, that's where our body actually does the most amount of healing. And so we really need to prioritize sleep. So if the bathroom is causing us issues and we get up 2 or 3 times in the night to go to the bathroom, there are actually things we can do about that. We have 2 pelvic floor specialists in my department who are absolutely phenomenal at helping people get through any of the types of incontinence that exist. And sometimes just bladder frequency is a form of incontinence. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily having accidents, but if it's not allowing you to get into REM sleep, you can address that. If it's anxiety, this meditation we're going to talk about today might actually be the trick to helping calm the mind so that you can get into that good REM sleep. Some people need to explore, hey, do I have sleep apnea? And do I need to go get some medical assistance with being able to get into good, deep REM sleep? Stress management, we're going to talk more about as we go on, but we could all manage our stress better. Every single one of us, including me. We don't necessarily have control at what gets thrown at us, but we do have control over how we choose to deal with it. Okay. And last but not least, hydration is huge. And whoever I'm looking at on the screen, I just saw take a drink of water. So that's fantastic. I even have mine here. So this is something that we can easily control every day. Okay. Getting in hydration. Think about what you're drinking. Okay. You may need to make some adjustments because if you're drinking tea and coffee as your primary sources, those things are dehydrating you. So you can find some good, healthy ways to get some hydration in. Okay. All right. Oh, my computer screen froze on me here. All right. This is also the next thing that I think is really, really important. I have had the honor and privilege of meeting a world-renowned oncologist who works out of Houston. His name is Dr. Philip Salem, and he treats a few people that are really near and dear to me. And one of the things that he says after, gosh, I think over 60 years of medical practice in oncology is that you cannot effectively treat a cancer diagnosis without hope. That's huge. Hope is huge. And every person that I talk to on a daily basis has a different version of what this looks like, but it's something that's easy for us to forget. And so I encourage you to find a way to make hope present itself every day in your life. And we can talk more about that as we go on. It's going to look different for each person. But if you don't have hope, then what are you doing? Right. And so when we start to think about or add meditation and mindfulness back in, hope is a very powerful source to help us in that realm. All right, so emotional and image recovery. These are just a few of the things that we start to address as we go through treatment and recovery. So medical reconstruction, helping adapt people to get back to feeling more like themselves. Prosthetics and adaptations. Sometimes tattooing is very healing for people. Getting people connected with good sources of support. Maybe it's within your family, or maybe you need a good counselor or some support groups. Sometimes people are finding a lot of online support by things like this, or just connecting with other survivors. Look Good, Feel Good is a class that's been offered in the past. I'm not sure if that's offered everywhere, but it does address image recovery. Maybe being fitted with wigs or doing some appearance changes as you go through growing back your hair after chemo and things like that. Intimacy recovery, and this can be very personal, but it also can include your therapist. Sometimes we just need perspective. You need to understand your partner's perspective and they need to understand yours. Coping skills, stress management, introducing meditation and mindfulness at every stage of this, and then changing routines. Recognizing that this is different for everyone. This looks different for absolutely everyone. Okay, so I'm giving you an introduction to my world. I think it's really important that if you're not seeing somebody as far as rehab goes, that you just understand what's available to you, because we are looking at the whole person and we can come in at any point in the journey. It doesn't matter if you had treatment 20 years ago and you're still dealing with a lack of range of motion or the psychosocial and emotional effects of it. We can still be involved and help you with this. So why meditation and mindfulness? I wish I could see a show of hands because I can't see all of you, but I'm betting that if I asked you, how many of you are intimidated by meditation? I'm betting that I would see at least a little bit of a show of hands from everybody on this. Now, maybe you've done some advanced training and you feel like you're really good at this, but for most people, meditation just seems like this really big concept. And what does it even mean? Okay. Well, to start, I am going to explain it to you, but I'm going to say, what does the brain, or how does the brain process negative emotions and stress? Well, it's almost like a vat of acid. When we create stress hormones in our body, I almost compare it to like battery acid being dumped inside our body. Our stress hormones create disease. They don't help us heal. And so the more we focus on our stress, the more environment we're creating in our body for cancer to thrive. Okay, so be mindful of that. And when you're having a day that you're really bogged down, you've got to put a stop to it. You've got to set an internal boundary and say, not today, stress, not today. And I know that that's harder than just saying that, but it takes practice. And so, first and foremost, recognizing how much stress you have in your body, what situations or people in your life maybe cause your stress, is the first step to mindfulness, recognizing it. Okay. What can be done to change the process? Well, believe it or not, we have complete control over this. We are not necessarily the victims that sometimes we see ourselves at the end of a stressful day, because we can make a change in pretty much any area of our life at any point. It doesn't mean it's not going to come with some hard things, but we can make these changes. That's up to us. How does our emotional state and our stress level affect our physical health? Well, it's huge. And I always ask the question, how is your emotional state before I start physically treating you? Because if you're a big ball of stress and I am trying to treat a physical ailment, maybe after breast cancer surgery, if you can control your stress, I might have this nice natural posture. But if you can't control your stress, you come into me and you're doing this. And if I'm treating your lymphatics or your scar tissue, this body posture and this management of stress is going to cause a lot more physical ailments because we don't circulate well in our body. Our muscles and our scar tissue tend to want to tighten. So that stress has a direct effect on your physical healing, including wound healing. What are the physical effects of a positive or regulated emotional state and stress reduction? Well, it's limitless, really. And as I teach this to my patients and I teach them better body posture and how to breathe and how to recognize how and where they hold stress in their body, it's an aha moment almost every time that I have somebody in my treatment room. Because, and I was even talking with a friend of mine yesterday who's having some numbness in her toes, and we had an aha moment together. And it's like, how are you grounding yourself with your stress? Right? Do you maybe try to ground yourself? And when I say ground, we all have to have a way to ground ourselves, to try to have a stopping point for our stress. Okay. And so a lot of times we carry our stress in our neck and our shoulders. And so after a stressful day, we'll just kind of feel like someone beat us up with a baseball bat. But I'm noticing even right now as I'm talking to you and I'm trying to make sure I get all my thoughts out, I'm digging my right foot into the ground and my second toe is going a little numb because I'm trying to ground myself. So we can start to recognize these things on a daily basis and then realize that, hey, I just noticed that my second toe is going numb. I changed my foot position, moved my toes around, and it's gone. So I eliminated that stress and I just decreased this physical effect that was happening because maybe I have a little bit of nerves talking to you, or maybe I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting everything out. How can a change be achieved? So let's go and talk more about meditation. Okay, so I'm assuming that this is most people's thought process when meditation comes up. If we go to that next slide, I looked up some definitions of meditation and I felt just as confused after I looked these up as I did before I started. So it implies a definite focusing on one's thoughts of something so as to understand it deeply. A practice that involves focusing or clearing your mind using a combination of mental and physical techniques. An art of being serene and alert in the present moment. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? That's the goal that we all have. But if I try to quiet my mind, go to that next slide for me. This is what my mind looks like. Is that your experience? Because I might lay there for about a minute and then I'm looking at my watch or I'm thinking, I need to mop the floor, or I have 15 minutes before I need to get out the door to pick one of my kiddos up from a sports practice or from school. Or my mind starts to make lists of things to do. And so when I try to quiet my mind, I think it actually explodes with electricity and it does the exact opposite of what I'm trying to achieve. Now, you guys might have mastered this. You might be able to actually lay there and quiet your mind or think about one topic and stay there. But we live in this crazy busy society where stuff's getting thrown at us and we're typically on a really busy schedule. And if we do get a few minutes of quiet, then our phone rings or we get a text message. So we're never really shutting down our mind. We're not purposely relaxing or being present. So I'm going to invite everybody to take a quick second. I want you to stand up, stretch your legs, and I want you to go get a pen and paper if you don't have one. And then we're going to start with something that I like to call a life inventory. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody just a minute here. I'm going to stand up and stretch too. And then we're going to dive into this, and I'm going to have you guys write some things down about yourselves, and we'll see if some themes emerge. Okay. This is a great time to have some water and hydrate.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm seeing, if you can't see it on your screen, I'm seeing people coming back to their chairs. And just so you're aware, if you can't see it on your screen, we got 28 people in the audience right now. So good.
Awesome. Great group. Okay. Well, we'll kind of start diving into this. So when I talk to people about meditation, I'm going to give you some direction because I think that this is really helpful to start to at least focus on what meditation needs to serve you with, so if we know where are our trouble areas right now, and we don't always take the time to sit down and think about that. So I'm going to walk you through that, and I'm hoping that some themes emerge so that you can have some direction as to where to start. I do think that it's very important to try some guided meditation and to set some intentions with what you're doing so that you can feel success when you start with meditation. Okay, so the first topic that we're going to talk about is self-love. And I want you to be honest with yourself. Nobody needs to see this piece of paper except for you. Are you taking time for yourself? That can come in many forms. Maybe it's that you get time for exercise. Maybe it's that you just take a few minutes to yourself to lay down and relax or read a book. Maybe what's really valuable to you is that you have time with a partner, a spouse, a friend, a child. Being separate from responsibility. Time that you are not giving of yourself to anyone else, but you're doing what you need. This is going to include nourishment of the mind, body, and spirit. Be honest with yourself. Are you giving yourself proper nutrition? Now, I think all things in moderation are fine. So if you're taking in the occasional sweet treat, I don't necessarily think that means you're not getting proper nutrition. But if the sweet treats or the unhealthy snacks are your go-to because you're stress eating maybe, or you're eating out of boredom, then be honest with yourself about what you're putting in your body. So is eating an issue for you? Hygiene. Are you taking the time or are you capable of proper hygiene of your body? Because this can be a challenge if we experience physical disability or maybe obesity or maybe even financially we don't have the means to get regular showers or have the hygiene products that we need. But we all know that where we're at on that scale does definitely affect our dignity. Touch. Are you getting healthy touch? And that might be, if you're a single person and you're not in a relationship, so you're not, having an intimate type touch, but are you getting healthy touch from others? Are you maybe getting an occasional hug or meeting up with your kids or family members? Because touch is something that's really difficult to live without. And so I think people can often struggle with depression or anxiety if they don't have healthy touch in their life. Are you in a safe environment? Do the people in your daily life, whether it's your home environment or your work environment, do you feel like you are in a safe space? Nourishment of the mind. Are you continuing to educate yourself? Continued knowledge is a very important component to helping us feel like we're accomplishing something in life. Or that feeling of accomplishment. Are you doing something on a daily basis, whether it be volunteering or in a work environment or a teaching capacity? Do you feel accomplished? Sometimes when people are really isolated and stuck in their home, it's really difficult to feel a sense of accomplishment. But with technology, there are many ways that you could contribute from home if you're in that situation. And so thinking about some of these things as contributing to our mental wellness. Are you reading or are you writing? Reading is very therapeutic for people, a good way to gain knowledge. Writing can be a really good way for us to express ourselves or connect and communicate with others. And that can include technology, maybe emailing. Nourishment of the spirit. For some people, this looks like religion and maybe rituals on a weekly basis within a church setting. Spirituality, for some people, this is connecting to something bigger than us. Sometimes people feel this spirit connection just simply being in nature or connecting with others, feeling valued, giving back. Sleep. Are you getting adequate sleep? This is where we recharge our battery, where we repair our body and our mind. And if you're not sleeping, that is a very significant impact on everything that you do. Exercise. Are you moving? Are you managing your stress? Are you creating a healthy body and a healthy mind? Are you getting enough oxygen in your system? Balance. What is your work, home, responsibility, relationship, time for self, sleep, exercise, finances? What does your balance look like? Are you spending significantly more time in one area of your life and then not allowing enough time for other areas of your life? And so I'm going to run through this real quick as you guys are thinking about this and writing these down, and I'm going to give you my life inventory. Okay. I balance a lot. I am the rehab director. We have, I believe, 13 employees in our rehab department total. And so I'm a treating therapist on top of managing and administration. And I have 3 children. My oldest just went off to college, and I've got one in middle school and one in elementary school. And I also have 3 family members actively going through cancer in my husband's family. And I lost a couple people really important in my life in the last year and a half. And so my life balance is kind of chaotic right now. And so when I think about time for myself, I don't get enough of it, but I do try to prioritize it every day. Sometimes it is that I'm one-on-one with one of my kids. Sometimes that is time with my husband. Sometimes it's just me needing to sit and pray or read. And oftentimes it's exercise. I am trying really hard to grocery shop with filling my cart with 50% fresh items. And I try to shop around the outside of the grocery store, but I'm not perfect. I love salted chocolate and caramel. Oh man. So that's my sweet treat. And I allow myself 2 small pieces of chocolate every day. So I feel like I get that. But I am working really hard on proper nutrition for myself and my kids. I feel like my hygiene is good. I love hugs. So I hug people throughout my day at work, and I'm a huge hugger at home. So touch is great.
I
I love,
lost sound.
what's that?
Oh, you're back again. We
Oh,
lost sound for a minute.
sorry about that. Um, so spirituality to me is huge. I have a very close one-on-one relationship with God and talk to my God all day long, every day. Try to keep things in perspective between the stress that I feel at home and the stress that I feel at work. And so I actually compartmentalize that, and I have kind of a little who are depending on me to help them move forward through their cancer diagnosis each day. And I kind of do the same thing when I get home, because I do experience tough days and loss at work at times, but also have incredible days with my patients. And so when I get home, sometimes I have to make that shift. Running is my form of exercise and therapy, but I try to be active in any form that I can with my kids, and that really balances me. So my daily balance shifts from day to day. If I would say the one area that I'm lacking in, it would be home. I really try hard to keep things in order. And I'm imploring my kids to do a lot more around the house. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what that looks like for myself. Okay. So maybe that'll give you some suggestions or ways to think about that. Okay. So let's go on to self-awareness. I see a huge range of self-awareness with my patients. And so I'll have somebody come in and they will notice the absolute most minute detail of how they're feeling for that day and that it was different than the days before. I also have people who will come in with a giant swollen limb and they don't notice it. So there's a huge variance as to how self-aware people are and what you're focused on. Okay. Being able to assess not just your health, but how things are affecting you is really important. What I like about meditation is that it helps you be present in the moment and focus on whatever you choose to focus on. So if it's figuring out where you hold stress in your body, if it's figuring out how to solve a problem that's nagging you, you are in charge with the intention that you set, and you can really self-direct this awareness and practice it and get better at it. So some things to think about when you're assessing yourself are, what's your energy like for the day? And how can you change that if needed? What's your mood like? And how does your mood affect the people around you? Are you dealing with chronic pain, health ailments? How is the treatment that you're experiencing affecting you? Where are you the most rested or performing your best mentally or physically throughout the day? This is a big one. What types of thoughts are you having throughout the day? Are those fear-based thoughts or anxiety-based thoughts sneaking in on you throughout your day? And maybe are those associated with certain people or certain activities? What are your biggest stressors? And this is really important for people to identify, because you can't change your stressors unless you identify them. Do you anger easily? How quickly can your mood shift? And what are those mood shifting triggers? Are you experiencing burnout? So these are all things that I want you to think about and try to write down in your inventory. I also want you to think about your habits. We do things on a regular basis because we're creatures of habit. And we might have done it that way for 30 years, but we don't realize that it doesn't make sense for us. And so assessing your habits is a really important thing to do, because we're all capable of creating new habits. Are you able to perform your activities of daily living? And are you performing all of them as needed? Activities of daily living are anything that we do to care for ourselves. So that can include our grooming, grooming, toileting, dressing, bathing, eating, sleeping, exercise, anything that you might do to take care of other people throughout the day, things that you can do in your work environment. If your independence level has changed, that might affect a lot of the things that we're talking about. And so that might be a reason to work with an occupational or physical therapist to see if those things can be improved upon or they can be adapted for you. And then what does your support system look like? What are the parts and pieces there? Okay, I did see a comment pop up, and I think it asked if we're going to go through any meditation techniques. Is that right, Kelly?
Can you hear me, Tracy?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. My internet's a little spotty right now, so I apologize if that's impacting anything. The question was, can you give an example of what a mantra might look like? And I responded to say, I think that was perhaps your next exercise is going through that.
Yep, it absolutely is. Okay. So setting your intention. Now we've talked about this life inventory, and we've likely seen some themes come up. Okay, if you're really honest with yourself, your themes are popping in your head. So when we set a mantra is as simple or as complex as you want it to be. So a lot of times a mantra is just one simple word. Okay, so hope could be a great mantra. If you're feeling defeated for the day, or you're dealing with a diagnosis and you're not really sure if you're in remission or if you're technically considered cancer free, hope can be a great mantra, but it changes from day to day. And so for me today, my house has been a chaotic mess after moving my daughter to college. And so for me, relaxation is my mantra this week. I want to purposely choose to relax every part of my body. So when you use a mantra, you can actually use it as part of a breathing technique, and you can repeat the word to yourself back and forth. Or something else that works really well for me is when I choose to exercise, I will put a mantra in my mind. So it's either something that I need to work on in myself, or maybe it's something I need to achieve. So when I do a talk like this, for example, and I need to have ideas come to me for my outline to write my presentation, I will think about, okay, I need to come up with my outline of meditation and mindfulness, and then I will go for a run. And while I'm going for a run, I go into this deep state of meditation, and it'll come to me, and I'll get back and I'll be able to write it all down. Okay. So I'd like to have you guys actually unmute yourselves. And I would like you to look at your life inventory that we just talked about. And I want you to either give me one word or one phrase that you feel like applies to you. It can be something you need to work on, or it can be a healing word. But I want us to throw out some mantra ideas so that we can share those with one another. So let's go ahead and do that.
Change.
Change. That's a great mantra.
Unwind.
Okay.
Serenity.
Serenity is great.
Yes. Intentional choices.
Great.
Relax.
We're on the same page.
Peace.
Okay.
De-stress.
Sometimes these mantras too can relate to our intimacy recovery and things with our partners too. So, I want you to think about those things too. Sometimes it's relational. Sometimes maybe it needs to be love or forgiveness. Maybe it's forgiving ourselves, or maybe it's forgiving others, or giving grace.
Listen.
That's beautiful.
Accept.
That's huge. Accept is huge. Accepting where we are, and being able to move forward in a positive direction, even with some tough stuff that we're dealing with.
Restore.
Beautiful.
Faith.
Faith is huge, and it can mean so many things. Understanding that we really can't control what's coming at us, but we can accept it, and we can choose how we react to it.
Staying in the present.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's a reason that the windshield is huge and the rear view mirror is really small. We don't want to live in what's behind us. Okay, so these are some really great ideas and they really vary. And I like that because I think it gives us a really good idea of all the places we could go with a mantra. So when you know that there's an area of life that you need to focus on, we can guide a meditation that way. So believe it or not, and we'll get to this, but at the end of my presentation, I provided you guys with a bunch of different guided meditation apps. So you can literally look up guided meditations for any topic that you're struggling with. Okay. So if it's relaxation, if it's maybe you're struggling with finances and you're overwhelmed with your medical bills, there are meditations that can help with financial literacy or just finding peace with that. Sleep, pretty much anything, health. So I think guided meditations are a good place to start once you have identified the areas that you're struggling with. And once you kind of learn some of the things that are being put out there to you, you can then go and try to quiet your mind and focus on some things that you've learned. Okay, so you could do it guided or you could do a mindful practice on your own. Either one of those things are okay, or you can combine them. Let's talk about some forms of meditation. I'm going to give you a better definition of meditation. So let's skip to that next slide there. So let's maybe adopt this mindset on meditation and mindfulness, a set of techniques that are intended to encourage a heightened state of awareness. So we're paying better attention to ourselves, focused attention and consciousness. So now we've gone through our life inventory and we know where we're struggling or what we need to address, with changing or combining techniques to improve psychological well-being. And also, I'm going to say, let's put the brakes and stop giving attention to things in our life that don't serve us. Okay, let's put a boundary within ourselves. So if it's our thoughts that are racing, or maybe our thoughts are creating fear or anxiety for us, or it's people or situations in our lives, we need to do a better job of putting the brakes on and saying, I don't have time for that because I'm focused on these other things. Next slide there, we'll talk about some of the types of meditation. If you've only ever thought about meditation as like laying still and trying to quiet your mind, this will be helpful for you, okay? Mindfulness can be a relaxed state with no distractions or being aware of your thoughts as they flow in and out of your mind. It's not always a bad thing to let your thoughts race because it might actually tell you something about yourself. It might actually tell you that the stress of your household being a mess is really where you need to focus some of your energy this week. Or if there's a certain person's words that keep coming into your mind that have really hurt your feelings, maybe that's where you need to focus some of your healing. If it's job stress that keeps coming into your mind, maybe you need to make a change. Okay. Being aware of those thoughts, but also being aware of your body and how certain situations are affecting you. Does anybody get stress sweat or bubble guts when you're about to maybe go in for a scan, or you're going to have to deal with somebody that you don't want to deal with? That's a really good indicator for you that that's a problem area for you. Okay. Your body's going into fight or flight. Spiritual, this can be prayer, it can be writing, it can be reading the Bible, it can be religious practices, it can be just peaceful time in nature, looking at the beauty of how things around us are designed. Focused on internal, maybe your pain areas, your body function, your breath. Nature, relaxation, observance of breath, and how our breath actually mimics like the sound of the waves of the ocean. Your place in space relative to what you're doing. And so like if you are somebody who are going to meditate in nature, a lot of people feel grounded by having their feet in the grass or by laying on the ground. For me, when I meditate, I do it in my front living room. I have a big picture window, and outside of that window is a giant tree. One of the most beautiful trees. I mean, it's massive. I can't even put my arms around the trunk of the tree. So when I lay, I always lay facing the tree because I feel like that grounds me to nature when I'm trying to calm my mind. Setting a mantra or an intention, that word or phrase, or like I said, if It can be stress related. It can be self-growth. It can be a problem that you need to solve. It can be something that you're progressively trying to accomplish. That mantra can be anything that you want it to be. Progressive relaxation, which is maybe the form of a body scan. If any of you have ever done a restorative yoga class, it's purposeful relaxation. And we're walking you through relaxing each part of the body and paying attention to your breath as it goes in and out. And that helps you to realize where you hold stress in your body. There's some positions in restorative yoga that make you really uncomfortable. You can't lay in that position for very long. And that's a really good indicator for you that maybe if I can't lay with my arms spread this way for 10 minutes, maybe it's because I'm holding a lot of stress and tension in my chest or my neck and shoulders. You can customize progressive relaxation to be anything. You know, if you're at work and you're in a chair, but you can be in a quiet office and shut your light off, or you can be lying down. I mean, there's multiple ways that you can choose to relax. Loving and kindness, sometimes just opening yourself to giving and receiving love or gifts or time spent is a really good way of dealing with some of our stresses. Visualization or guided meditation. So a visualization is going to be different in the sense that when I do a visualization with a patient and say that we're dealing with a right-sided breast cancer, I may have that person envision the body with a working lymphatic system. So I have a poster in my office that shows the lymphatic vessels, and I might have them envision all of these vessels being filled with white liquid. Okay, white is typically healing, and so we want to envision it that way. And maybe envisioning a tumor or the previous bed of a tumor as a gray or a dark space, and envisioning the body bringing that white light, taking over that gray and dark space and replacing it. Or, you know, if you're having pain in one specific area, envisioning the pain slowly dissipating or disintegrating away. That mind-body connection is really, really powerful. Your brain is capable of doing a lot of healing in your body if you connect the two together on purpose. So we don't want to continue to give cancer cells power in our body. We want to envision our body overtaking those negative cells and replacing them with positive, healthy, healing cells. A guided meditation could be visual or it could be auditory. And like I said, we can choose different topics, or it can just be kind of an overall touch on everything. The meditation that I'm going to provide for you, and I'll give you the link for that as we go forward. I made this meditation for my patients because I felt like I couldn't find anything at the time that would really serve people's needs. And so we'll get to that. And there's a lot of examples on there that you can go through so you can kind of get a little taste of everything. Movement is a really big form of meditation. And I don't think that everybody is aware that exercise can be meditation. It's my most powerful form of meditation. Running for me is the most healing thing. I would rather go for a run than take a nap because it makes me feel that much better. Now, I'm fully aware that not everybody feels that way, and I probably sound kind of crazy for saying that, but yoga or restorative yoga, gardening, hiking, walking, running, any form of movement, swimming. As I mentioned before, sex can even be a form of meditation or healing in that way. Anything water-based can be very healing for people. There's sort of an idea that getting into water or using water to wash away the old and bring in the new. So showers and baths can be very meditative. Getting into a natural spring, just that cleansing metaphor. So water can be a very powerful form of meditation. And then a body scan where we purposely relax and pay attention to our body in a state of stress versus a state of relaxation. And the breath is a very powerful part of meditation. So learning how to do that breathing. We have about 10 minutes left in our discussion. I can open up for some questions, or if you guys would rather, I could walk us through a quick body scan and a little bit of breathing exercise. So why don't you guys give me some feedback as to what you feel like would be the most beneficial for you?
I'd like to do a meditation.
Yeah, me too. The body scan.
Okay. So I will stick around a little bit after 11:15 if needed, if anybody has some questions. I'm not in a hurry. So let's go through a body scan. You can choose in your environment what works best for you. I don't know if there's people in person or if everybody's at home. You can sit in a chair, you can sit in a recliner, or you can lie on the floor or on a couch. I do think that it's important to feel a sense of grounding. I think lying for me is the most powerful way to do a body scan. So go ahead and get yourselves comfortable. And we will start with a little bit of a breathing technique first. You do not need to be looking at me, so feel free to just close your eyes and kind of be in the moment. I apologize, I don't have any music to play for us, but we're going to do a meditation that was actually the first meditation that was ever taught to me when I was a freshman in high school in cross country. And it's kind of stuck with me my whole life. So the first thing that I want you to do is just notice your breath. So I want you to breathe normally. And I want you to take in 3 or 4 breaths. And I just want you to focus on what it feels like when the breath comes into your nose, into your nasal passage, and down into your lungs. You may notice that that breath is cool when it's coming in and maybe a little bit warmer as it's coming out. This might be a time that you notice that you have a little bit of congestion and you don't have a clear path for breathing. You may notice that you're feeling short of breath. It's difficult to take a breath in and a breath out. I'd like to invite you now to take a little deeper breath. I want you to take that breath in through your nose, and I want you to take it in so that you feel like you're bringing it almost into your stomach. A good deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. I want you to smell the roses, blow out those candles. With your next couple of breaths, I want you to take in as much air as you can. And then I want you to blow out twice as long as you think you can. Again. We don't ever want the breathing to make us feel like we're making ourselves short of breath, but I do want you to understand the capacity that you have for the breath is a lot greater than we normally take in. This next time that you breathe in, I want you to breathe in to the point where you feel like it hits the top of the top, or you feel like that breath almost hits the top of your head. So breathe in deep, full capacity. And now as you breathe out, I want you to blow out as much air as you can, almost to the point where you feel like you're going to bear down for a bowel movement. That means that you're going to fully engage your abdomen and you're going to push that breath all the way to the bottom of the bottom. So we're going to breathe in deep to the top of the top. Now exhale to the bottom of the bottom. Should almost feel like you're pulling your belly button to your spine in order to engage all of your abs and get that breath to the bottom of the bottom. Breathe in. Exhale. So now we've engaged the majority of the center of our body just in our breath. And that's a really different feeling than when we normally take a breath. So if you're trying to quiet your mind, and get yourself to focus or concentrate on one thing, that breathing strategy is a really good way to do it. I want you now to relax your breathing to the point where it feels comfortable. We'll just take in some good deep breaths in and out. We're going to start at the top of our head, and we are going to progressively notice and squeeze all of those muscles. And I want you to think about the muscles in your scalp, your forehead, your face, and your neck. And I want you to squeeze all of those muscles for a good 5 seconds. I almost want you to think about when you tasted a lemon and everything got sour. You're going to squeeze all those face muscles. You're going to squeeze the scalp. You can clench the jaw. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze as tight as you can. And then I want you to relax. Relax all of it. It should kind of feel like jello. And take in a couple of breaths. We're going to move down now into the upper chest and the shoulders and the arms and the hands. So I want you to squeeze your fists and flex your forearms, lock out your elbows, squeeze your shoulders, clench your pecs, and tighten kind of the scapula. I want you to squeeze that whole upper part of your body. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Squeeze it tight, clench it down, and relax. Let the fists go, open up the hands, take in a nice deep breath. Exhale. Again. Now we're going to come to our abdomen and our back. I want you to pull that belly button to your spine, and I want you to clench down the abdominal muscles, and I want you to think about those lateral muscles and those back muscles, and I want you to squeeze all of it. Squeeze, 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 almost like you're going to bear down. Squeeze everything tight. Squeeze, 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 and release. Take in a deep breath. Exhale. Again. Exhale. We're going to move to the glutes and the thighs, and we're going to squeeze those butt muscles, squeeze those pelvic muscles, and squeeze the thighs. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze as tight as you can. And relax. Deep breath. Again. And relax. Then we're going to move to our calves, our ankles, and our toes. We're going to curl our toes and squeeze our calves as tight as we can. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And relax. Open up the toes. Relax the ankles. Nice deep breath. Exhale. I want you to take a minute to remember your mantra, and I want you to repeat your mantra to yourself with your inhale and with your exhale. Again. One last time. I want you to slowly open your eyes, wiggle your fingers and your toes, maybe bend your knees and your elbows, shift around your shoulders, and just notice that deeper state of relaxation that you've put your body in. Does anybody have any feedback as to how that made them feel?
I could go take a nap.
What's that?
I could go take a nap.
So that kind of teaches us how much stress we hold. You know, when we purposely flex and engage everything, and then we let it go like jello, you're in this much control of reducing that physical stress that you feel. Now, I used to use this as a technique to relax my mind and body before I ran cross-country races. Overwhelming day and I can't calm down. This is how I do it. So this is a really simple thing you can walk yourself through. But on my resilience website, and if we can go to that slide, it might be a couple slides down. That website down there, resiliencesurvivorship.com, you can download that meditation tool. There's a combination of techniques. There's a body scan, there's some breathing, there's some visualization. And then also there's another section on there that is going to give just some positive affirmations. So this is the best way I can give this tool to you for free. It is on iTunes and Google Play, and they change the cost of it. It's kind of up there to their discretion. But if it's something that you want to have downloaded onto a phone or a device, that's another way to do it. But I like to provide it for free when I can. So this is something that you guys can get on and do and practice. It's very general. It's for wellness, but it'll touch on a lot of different areas. And then at the end of the slideshow, and she's going to make this available to everybody. Let's see here. There's some references and resources where I will give you guys some additional guided meditation options. And it's at the very end, so you don't have to skip clear to it. So the slide that I'd like to go to real quick is slide number 27. What can you control?
Sorry, my internet's a little slow right now, but I'm getting there.
Great. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. What can you control? You can shift your perceptions and your thoughts. You can choose your reaction to any circumstance, any diagnosis, any circumstance that you're dealt with. You can shift and choose how you react to it. You're able to change your habits if you're aware of them. You can set any needed boundaries with people in your life or relationships or work situations. You can build the life that you choose if you're aware of yourself, your life inventory, and how things are affecting you. You can continue to educate yourself. You can be an advocate for yourself and other people. And all that this really requires of you is practice, practice, practice. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know I've thrown a lot at you. I am going to make myself available to you. I have all of my information, my contact information at the end of the slideshow. I do have, I've been having a little bit of issue with my new website here, this Resilient Survivorship. We've been hacked a couple times, so we're trying to get those details worked out. But if you can access the website, which I was able to this morning, there are a lot of resources up in lots of different areas. And we will be also having a event, a survival event come in. What's that? Oh, maybe that was me just saying that. A event in November 4th at St. Mark's Church, and there will be information out about that on our website and also on my Resilient Survivorship Facebook page. So I will open it up for everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Can you hear me okay, or is my audio spotty right now?
I can hear you.
We have some love in the chat box as well. Jen said, outstanding, timely, and helpful presentation. And Mary Beth said, thank you so much. Like Tracy said, we'll go ahead and send the slides and some links in a follow-up email as well. But like she also said, if you have any follow-up questions, she's willing to stay on a little bit longer. Feel free to come off mute or put anything in the chat box.
Great. This was wonderful. Thank you. I didn't know what to expect from this program. It was different than I expected, but wonderful, full of things for me to think about and try. You mentioned that there were a number of different meditation links and stuff. Are those all going to be listed? Kelly is going to be forwarding to us?
Yes. In fact, there are 31 slides in the presentation options that are all online. It includes the one of mine that I'm telling you about, and then several of kind of the top rated different meditation options. Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
You. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
And I'll also say, having us think about mantras, right? As we were working on this, it meant when during the guided meditation, you said, now think of your mantra. And I thought, oh, I hadn't picked one, but I had said one. And so I just pulled that up right on in the moment to use. And as I was using it, I thought, oh my gosh, this really is what would be helpful for me to use today. So thank you.
You're welcome. And of course, they can change from day to day. That's the beauty of it. You know, you can customize your day. We never have the same day twice.
Yes, I love that. That was a whole different understanding. I always had this notion of, the Maharishi giving you your mantra that was your mantra for life, sort of umawa or whatever, and setting your intention and picking a mantra, picking a specific focus for the moment. Really a helpful idea.
Yeah. Well, and you can go back and do a life inventory anytime, you might need to do it every and kind of where you're at.
Thanks, everybody. And a special thanks to Tracy for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. I hope that this was helpful, and I different take on meditation than most people have probably seen before, but I hope it makes it a little bit more functional, and maybe a little bit less intimidating to start trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize. My internet is really unstable, or if I'm cutting in and out, or if I'm interrupting people, but I don't think we have any other questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just end the meeting. And we'll follow up this week with some additional resources. But thanks, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.